Knott's Timber Mountain Log Ride sits at the center of Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, a groundbreaking flume ride that raised the bar for themed attractions across the country and has been delighting guests of all ages since 1969. Ride designer and theme park pioneer Bud Hurlbut had successfully opened the groundbreaking Calico Mine Ride in 1960, a mammoth undertaking that included a 9-story Calico mine that housed dozens of figures and told the story of the plight of California gold miners and the conditions they worked in. Looking back to the turn of the century, this time romanticizing the life of North American loggers, Bud wanted an attraction that was unlike any other. He then came up with a revolutionary free-float ride system that would not employ any mechanical device to regulate passage.
Well, originally what Bud Hurlbut was planning for this log ride attraction was he was going to build a roller coaster, but put that roller coaster in a flume to act like a log. He went to the folks at Aero Development, and together they hashed out this great idea to build a log ride in a water flume attraction. However, the idea had never been tested before. No one had ever built anything quite like it. And Walter Knott said no. He didn't want to take the risk with his guests to do something so outrageous, so unheard of. So it was in 1963 that Bud Hurlbut sold this concept of a log ride attraction to Aero Development, which then sold it to Six Flags Over Texas. They got the first log ride, but a few years later, Walter Knott eventually said, the project is tested, it's safe, let's bring it to Knott's Berry Farm. And in 1969, Bud Hurlbut gave us the log ride that we know and love today.
Bud Hurlbut's ride would be different than any flume ride ever built. A 300-foot-long mountain with a 2,100-foot-long flume and 24,000 gallons of water that passed through a turn-of-the-century logging camp, complete with dozens of animatronic figures and taxidermied animals.
Knott's Berry Farm got the world's first themed log ride. Bud Hurlbut gave us an entire mountain range filled with caverns and caves and forest scenes with loggers, and nobody else had anything quite like that. I think all of us love the log ride to this day and appreciate what it's given us simply because it is so full of an amazing piece of theatrical fantasy that no other log ride has.
Bud created not one but two complete models of the attraction to show Walter Knott. Walter became a supporter of the project, but not a financial backer.
He financed these projects all by himself. Walter Knott owned the land. This was his farmland. But Bud Hurlbut was a concessionaire who brought his idea to Walter Knott. So it was Bud Hurlbut who paid for these attractions, the mine ride, the log ride, out of his own pocket. The log ride itself cost about $3.5 million, and Bud paid for that. It was only over a period of maybe a year and a half, that he actually recouped his investment in that $3.5 million. He did pretty darn well for himself.
As an amusement expert, Bud demanded a faithful reproduction in his historically based attractions. Enormous engineering problems were met and solved in the planning of the log ride.
It was sort of a random, unpredictable ride system. It wasn't controlled like being on iron rails on a train or a roller coaster or something like that. The log and water do what they want to do. And speaking from experience with Splash Mountain, I know it never does what you want it to do. To go about that and try to contain the water, allow for the unpredictability of different weights of guests riding in the boats and how high they ride or how low they ride or how much of a splash goes over the edge. I can imagine it was a non-stop battle trying to figure out ways to control that water and make it do what you want to do, especially at that dawning decade of technology. The neat thing about Bud, and I got to know him personally in his later years, he was so persistent. He would never say no about anything. He would figure out a way, and there was always a way. And I know as a 20-year-old, when this opened, I was amazed. You know, this was something that took ride technology to a whole new level.
While Bud was overcoming obstacles, Walter was securing a master of ceremonies. Legendary screen star John Wayne had been a friend of the Knott family for many years. Wayne was happy to oblige, but he was unavailable in late August, the ride's scheduled opening. But he was available in early July.
The opening date was moved up a month or more over what it was supposed to have been. The opening date was supposed to have been in August. The ride interiors were not finished at all. The only ones that were finished were the sawmill and maybe the valley and the scene, the machine shop at the bottom of the final lift.
Opening day was quite spectacular, with John Wayne helicoptered in with his 6-year-old son, Ethan.
The crowd was humongous. I heard a report even that the ticket seller couldn't keep up with the ticket sales hardly. And it was just a huge, huge crowd.
Among the thousands of guests that came out to ride this astounding attraction was budding future Disney Imagineer Tony Baxter.
Because I was here on opening day, I probably ditched my schooling at that time and whatnot to do it, because I believe it was a weekday, it wasn't a weekend. And I came out here, I know they had John Wayne, but what intrigued me the most was that this lift right behind me over here was propelling those boats up in a way I had never seen before. It was on a rubber mat rather than a chain that would drag a roller coaster back up the hill. So being the normal inquisitive person that I am, I jumped up on the rocks over there to look in just at the time that your photographers snapped a publicity shot. So many, many years later, like decades later, someone was perusing that photo, and there it's very clear that I'm in the picture because I'm about 2 feet higher, standing on the rock, looking at how these magical boats were going up to the top of that lift.
The ride was an immediate success. Many other parks have attempted to copy it, but none have the flavor of the original Timber Mountain log ride.
I think because everybody recognizes that this type of ride offers an experience that is totally wild and different every time you ride it. So Disneyland was eager to have one too, but it had to be very distinctly different. I think in the end, we have two experiences to offer the Southern California guests that are really, really unique and part of the culture of Southern California and a part of what makes our part of the world that exciting to come to and be a part of.
What I adore about Knott's Berry Farm is that it truly is a first. Knott's Berry Farm gave us the world's first themed amusement park, and Bud Hurlbut gave us wonderful, detailed attractions that nobody had seen before. And these attractions inspired other theme park developers and companies.
I would say, without a doubt, as of today, there is no log ride that compares to it.
You know, when you've got an asset like Calico Mountain, what's really important to remember about it, it's multi-generational. So you've got an older generation like myself that grew up with it and has such fond memories. When you get an opportunity to go in and refresh something like this, the real trick is finding a way to bring back the magic that past generations still want and are going to seek out when you announce it, but also to bring something into it that excites the young ones. So it becomes a family adventure, and then if you can do that, it's a home run.